Hello, my dear friends. I hope you're doing well and feeling great today. As we grow older, our experiences and wisdom allow us to see life more clearly. But even with all that insight, it's not uncommon to encounter people who don't always have the best intentions. Some might drain your energy, manipulate your emotions, or even bring unnecessary negativity into your life. It's important to recognize these behaviors early and understand how to protect your emotional well-being. In this video, we'll explore 10 clear signs that someone in your life might not have your best interests at heart. Whether it's a neighbor, a distant family member, or even someone you've known for years, recognizing these red flags is the first step toward protecting yourself. We'll also talk about practical steps you can take to set boundaries and maintain healthier relationships. Now, before we dive in, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from? Comment below and share your city. I always enjoy hearing from you. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more tips like these. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming up next. Point 1. Pleasure in others' pain. Let's begin with something that's both unsettling and, unfortunately, more common than we'd like to think. People who seem to find joy in the pain or struggles of others. It's hard to wrap your head around, isn't it? After all, you've probably spent a lifetime trying to help others, being kind, and offering a hand when someone's in need. But some people, whether it's a neighbor, a so-called friend, or even a family member, don't think the same way. Instead, they take pleasure in seeing others struggle. Now, what does this behavior look like? It can show up in subtle ways or be as blatant as a slap in the face. Maybe you've shared a personal challenge with someone, a health issue, a financial difficulty, or even a tough day, and instead of offering you comfort, they smirk or make a sarcastic comment. Or worse, they gossip about it behind your back, turning your pain into entertainment. These are people who lack empathy, and their actions say a lot about their character. They might seem friendly on the surface, but their behavior reveals something much darker. Let me share an example that might sound familiar. Picture this. You're telling someone about how you've been feeling a bit down or overwhelmed. Instead of offering support, they respond with, "Well, it could be worse," or "You should just get over it." These dismissive words may seem minor, but over time, they chip away at your confidence and sense of worth. You might even start to question yourself. Am I being too sensitive? Should I just keep quiet next time? No, my friend, you are not being too sensitive. Your feelings are valid, and you deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. Sometimes, this behavior is even more deliberate. There are people who actively create situations to watch others suffer, spreading gossip, instigating conflicts, or twisting stories to stir up trouble. They thrive on chaos and the emotional turmoil of others. Why? Because it makes them feel powerful or gives them a sense of control. It's a toxic cycle, and if you're not careful, it can pull you in and leave you feeling drained. So, what can you do about it? The first step is to trust your instincts. If someone's actions or words consistently leave you feeling uneasy, pay attention to that. It's your inner voice trying to protect you. Next, don't be afraid to set boundaries. This doesn't mean you have to confront them aggressively. It simply means deciding how much access they have to your life. Limit your interactions with these individuals and focus your time and energy on people who truly care about you. It's also important to remind yourself that their behavior is not a reflection of you. It's easy to take things personally, but the truth is, their cruelty stems from something within them, not from anything you've done. By recognizing this, you can avoid getting trapped in their negativity and start focusing on what truly matters, your happiness and peace of mind. Point 2. The need to control your life. Let's talk about another sign that can be incredibly draining and harmful. When someone has an overwhelming need to control your life. Some people just can't seem to let others live on their own terms. They want to interfere, dictate, and manipulate every aspect of your life, often under the pretense of helping or knowing better. This kind of behavior can be subtle or outright blatant. For instance, imagine a family member who constantly questions your decisions. Maybe they criticize how you spend your time, manage your finances, or even handle your health. They might phrase their comments as advice, but it often feels more like judgment or control. A statement like, "You shouldn't be doing that at your age," might sound caring at first, but over time, it can erode your confidence and make you second-guess yourself. Another common example is someone who insists on taking over tasks or responsibilities you're perfectly capable of handling. This might be a neighbor or even a caregiver who says, "Let me handle that. You don't know what you're doing." While help is appreciated when it's genuinely offered, these actions often come with strings attached. They can make you feel powerless, as if you're incapable of managing your own affairs. This is especially frustrating when you know you're perfectly capable. Why do people act this way? Often, their need to control stems from their own insecurities or fear of losing influence over others. By dictating your life, they feel important or needed. But here's the truth. Their need for control isn't your burden to carry. You've earned the right to make your own choices, even if they don't align with someone else's expectations. So, how do you handle someone like this? First, recognize the behavior for what it is. When someone repeatedly tries to control your decisions, it's not about helping. It's about asserting power. Once you've identified this pattern, it's time to set boundaries. For example, if a family member keeps interfering in your personal decisions, you might say, "I appreciate your concern, but I've got this handled." It's polite but firm, letting them know that while their input is noted, the final decision is yours. Another important step is to practice self-trust. You've navigated life's challenges for decades, and your instincts are sharper than you might realize. Trust in your ability to make decisions, even if others don't agree. Remind yourself that it's okay to say no, and that you don't owe anyone an explanation for living your life the way you choose. Lastly, focus on relationships that respect your independence. Spend your time with people who value your input and encourage your autonomy, rather than those who try to control or belittle you. Life is too short to spend it under someone else's thumb. Point 3. A strange feeling when you're in their presence. Let's talk about something a little harder to put into words, but just as important to recognize. That strange, uneasy feeling you get when you're around certain people. You might not be able to explain it right away, but something about them feels off. It could be a sense of discomfort, fatigue, or even a subtle anxiety that settles in when they're near. This is your intuition speaking, and it's worth paying attention to. Have you ever noticed how some people just seem to drain your energy? Maybe it's a neighbor who stops by unannounced and stays for hours, leaving you feeling exhausted rather than refreshed. Or it could be a family member whose mere presence feels heavy, like they bring a cloud of negativity with them. These feelings aren't just in your head. Our instincts often pick up on subtle cues that our conscious minds might miss. You might wonder, what is it about them that makes me feel this way? Sometimes it's their body language, crossed arms, a fake smile, or constant interruptions when you speak. Other times, it's their energy. They might talk in a way that feels dismissive or condescending, making you feel small or unimportant. Whatever it is, your gut is usually spot on when it tells you something isn't right. This kind of unease often stems from their hidden intentions or unresolved negativity. They might not openly insult or criticize you, but their behavior subtly erodes your sense of peace. For example, they might constantly bring up past mistakes you've made, making you feel guilty or inadequate. Or maybe they share backhanded compliments like, "You're doing well for someone your age," which might sound polite but are actually hurtful. So, what can you do when you get that strange feeling around someone? The first step is to honor it. Don't brush it off as overthinking or being too sensitive. Your instincts are there to protect you, and if someone consistently makes you feel uneasy, there's probably a good reason for it. Next, try to limit your exposure to these individuals. This doesn't mean you have to cut them out of your life completely, although that's an option if their behavior is particularly toxic. Instead, focus on creating some distance. For example, if a certain friend leaves you feeling drained after every visit, consider meeting less often or keeping conversations shorter. You can also set emotional boundaries. If someone tends to bring negativity into every interaction, decide in advance how much you're willing to engage. Keep the conversation light and avoid topics that make you feel uncomfortable or vulnerable. Protecting your energy is just as important as protecting your time. Lastly, surround yourself with people who uplift you. When you spend time with positive, kind-hearted individuals, you'll notice the difference almost immediately. These are the people who make you feel lighter, happier, and more at ease. They remind you of the goodness in the world, and their presence helps you recharge rather than drain your spirit. Point 4. lack of responsibility. Now, let's discuss another crucial sign to watch out for: a consistent lack of responsibility. This is one of the most frustrating traits you'll encounter in people, especially when it directly affects your life. These individuals never seem to own up to their mistakes, and instead, they are quick to shift blame onto others. It's exhausting to deal with, and it often leaves you feeling unappreciated, frustrated, or even guilty for things that aren't your fault. You've probably met someone like this before. Maybe it's a friend who's always late but blames the traffic or forgets plans and says, "You should have reminded me." Or perhaps it's a family member who makes bad decisions and then turns around and acts like they're the victim. They might say things like, "I only did that because you made me feel this way," or "If it weren't for you, this wouldn't have happened." It's a never-ending cycle of deflection and denial. At first, you might feel compelled to give them the benefit of the doubt. After all, no one is perfect, and we all make mistakes from time to time. But here's the difference. Responsible people own their mistakes, learn from them, and make an effort to do better. Irresponsible people, on the other hand, are experts at avoiding accountability. They'll twist the story, manipulate the facts, and do whatever it takes to escape blame. Let me give you an example that might resonate. Imagine working on a project with someone, whether it's a small home improvement task or organizing an event. Something goes wrong, and instead of admitting their role in the mishap, they point fingers at you or others. Not only is this behavior unfair, but it also creates unnecessary tension and erodes trust. What's even more concerning is how this lack of responsibility can seep into other areas of life. People who avoid accountability are often unreliable in general. They make promises they can't keep, offer excuses instead of solutions, and leave others to clean up their messes. Over time, this pattern can weigh heavily on you, especially if you're someone who values honesty and dependability. So, how do you handle people like this? The first step is to recognize the pattern. If someone frequently deflects blame or refuses to acknowledge their mistakes, it's a clear sign of irresponsibility. Once you see this behavior for what it is, you can approach the situation more objectively without internalizing their attempts to make you feel at fault. The next step is to set boundaries. If you're working on something with an irresponsible person, be clear about expectations and responsibilities up front. For example, you might say, "Let's make sure we both know what we're responsible for so there's no confusion later." This puts the focus on shared accountability and makes it harder for them to shift blame later on. It's also important to manage your expectations. If you know someone has a history of avoiding responsibility, don't expect them to suddenly change overnight. Instead, adjust your involvement with them to minimize the impact of their behavior on your life. For instance, you might avoid relying on them for important tasks or limit how often you interact with them. Finally, surround yourself with people who value accountability and integrity. These are the people who will admit when they're wrong, take steps to fix their mistakes, and support you in doing the same. Relationships built on mutual respect and responsibility are far more fulfilling and less stressful. Point 5. Habitual lying. Let's move on to a behavior that can completely destroy trust in any relationship: habitual lying. People who consistently lie, whether it's about small details or major events, are not only difficult to trust but also harmful to your emotional well-being. Honesty is the foundation of all healthy relationships, and when someone repeatedly lies, they chip away at that foundation until nothing stable is left. Now, lying can take many forms. Some people tell outright lies, fabricating stories out of thin air to serve their own interests. Others are more subtle, twisting the truth or withholding important details to manipulate situations. Regardless of the approach, habitual lying is always a red flag that someone isn't being genuine. Let's think of a simple example. Imagine you're talking to someone about their plans, and they constantly make excuses or offer conflicting stories. One day they say they're busy with a certain task, and the next time, they completely contradict themselves. These small lies might seem harmless at first, but they add up and make you question everything they say. Over time, you find yourself doubting even their most basic statements. In other cases, lying can be much more damaging. For instance, a friend or family member might lie to cover up their mistakes, make themselves look better, or shift blame onto you. They might say, "I never said that," or "You must have misunderstood," even when you're certain of what happened. This kind of behavior can make you feel frustrated, confused, and even question your own memory or judgment. Why do people lie? Often, habitual liars are trying to control how others perceive them. They might feel insecure about their abilities or choices and think lying will help them avoid criticism. Others lie simply to gain power in a situation, manipulating people and events to serve their own agenda. Regardless of the reason, the impact of their dishonesty is the same. It undermines trust and creates unnecessary tension. So, how do you deal with someone who lies habitually? First, acknowledge the pattern. If you find that someone frequently changes their story or gives you excuses that don't add up, trust your instincts. There's no need to confront them about every lie, but it's important to be aware of their behavior so you can protect yourself. Next, avoid putting too much trust in their words. Instead of relying on what they say, pay attention to their actions. People can say whatever they want, but their behavior often reveals the truth. For example, if they promise to help you with something but repeatedly fail to follow through, their actions are telling you all you need to know. You can also set boundaries to protect your peace of mind. If their lies directly affect you, let them know that honesty is important to you. For example, you might say, "I value open communication, and I'd appreciate it if we could be upfront with each other." While this won't guarantee they'll change, it sets a clear expectation for your interactions. Finally, don't take their lies personally. Habitual lying is often a reflection of their own insecurities or issues, not a sign of anything you've done wrong. Focus on surrounding yourself with people who are honest, reliable, and supportive. These are the relationships that will uplift and sustain you. Point 6. Absence of remorse. Now let's discuss a particularly troubling trait, an absence of remorse. This is when someone refuses to feel guilty or apologize for the harm they've caused. Instead of owning up to their actions, they might twist the situation to make you feel like you're in the wrong. It's an emotionally exhausting dynamic that can leave you feeling hurt, confused, and even questioning your own experiences. Think about this. Have you ever confronted someone about something they said or did that upset you, only to have them brush it off or turn it around on you? Maybe they said something hurtful, and when you expressed how it made you feel, their response was, "Oh, you're just too sensitive," or "I was only joking." These dismissive remarks not only invalidate your feelings, but also highlight their unwillingness to take responsibility for their behavior. People who lack remorse often have a knack for making others feel like the problem. For example, let's say someone you trusted betrayed your confidence by sharing something personal you told them. When you confront them, instead of apologizing, they might say, "Well, maybe you shouldn't have told me if it was that important." This kind of response shifts the blame onto you, leaving you feeling guilty for something that wasn't your fault. In more extreme cases, an absence of remorse can go hand in hand with manipulative behavior. These individuals might deliberately hurt others, whether through words or actions, and then act as if nothing happened. When questioned, they might deny their behavior altogether or downplay its impact, leaving you feeling like you're overreacting. This kind of emotional manipulation can be incredibly damaging, especially when it comes from someone close to you. So, why do some people behave this way? Often, it's because admitting fault would require them to confront their own shortcomings, and that's something they're not willing to do. Instead, they deflect, deny, or dismiss, protecting their ego at the expense of others' feelings. Unfortunately, this means they're unlikely to change unless they choose to take a hard look at themselves, which doesn't happen often. What can you do when you encounter someone who lacks remorse? First, understand that their behavior is about them, not you. It's not your job to make them see the error of their ways, especially if they're unwilling to listen. Instead, focus on protecting your emotional well-being. If their behavior consistently leaves you feeling hurt or frustrated, consider creating some distance. Setting boundaries is also essential. For example, if someone refuses to apologize or dismisses your feelings, you can calmly say, "I feel hurt by what happened, and I need some space to process this." This lets them know that their actions have consequences, even if they refuse to acknowledge them. Finally, surround yourself with people who do take responsibility for their actions. Genuine relationships are built on mutual respect and accountability. When someone makes a mistake and apologizes sincerely, it strengthens the bond between you. On the other hand, Relationships with people who lack remorse can leave you feeling drained and unappreciated. Point 7. Cruelty. Cruelty is one of the most damaging traits a person can exhibit, and it's one that's impossible to ignore. This behavior isn't just about saying or doing something hurtful on occasion. After all, we all have moments we regret. True cruelty is deliberate, consistent, and often comes from a place of deep insensitivity or even malicious intent. It's the kind of behavior that leaves lasting scars on others, and recognizing it is key to protecting your emotional well-being. Cruel individuals often take pleasure in bringing others down. Have you ever noticed someone who seems to go out of their way to make harsh remarks, point out flaws, or humiliate others? Maybe it's a friend who loves to joke at your expense, making you the punchline of their stories in front of others. Or perhaps it's a family member who constantly criticizes your choices, your lifestyle, or even your appearance, leaving you feeling small and insignificant. Sometimes, cruelty isn't even disguised. It can show up as outright verbal abuse, where someone says things with the clear intention of hurting you. Phrases like, "You'll never get it right," or "You're just too old to understand," are examples of how people use words to demean and belittle. Over time, these comments can erode your confidence and self-worth, especially if they come from someone you trust or care about. It's also important to recognize that cruelty doesn't always come in words. Actions can be just as hurtful, if not more so. For instance, a neighbor who intentionally excludes you from community events or a caregiver who ignores your requests for help in subtle but intentional ways. These acts of cruelty may seem small, but they add up and can make you feel isolated or unwanted. Why are some people cruel? Often, it stems from their own unhappiness or insecurities. They lash out at others to make themselves feel better or to mask their own pain. While this might explain their behavior, it doesn't excuse it. No one has the right to use cruelty as a way to cope with their own issues. So, what can you do if you're dealing with someone who exhibits this kind of behavior? The first step is to recognize that their actions are a reflection of them, not you. It's easy to internalize their hurtful words or actions, but remember, their cruelty is about their own struggles, not your value as a person. Next, consider setting boundaries. If someone repeatedly crosses the line, let them know how their behavior affects you. For example, you might say, "I don't appreciate being spoken to that way," or, "If you can't be respectful, I'm going to have to end this conversation." This shows them that their actions have consequences and that you're not willing to tolerate their behavior. It's also important to protect your mental health. Surround yourself with people who treat you with kindness and respect. Seek out relationships that lift you up rather than tear you down. If someone's cruelty is persistent and they refuse to change, it may be necessary to create distance or even end the relationship entirely. Lastly, remind yourself of your worth. Cruel words and actions can leave deep wounds, but they don't define who you are. Focus on the positive aspects of your life and the people who genuinely care about you. You've lived through challenges and come out stronger, and you deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. Point 8. Lack of empathy. Let's talk about one of the most telling traits of a toxic person: a lack of empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. It's what allows people to connect on a deeper level, offering support and care when someone is struggling. When empathy is absent, it creates a cold and distant dynamic, one where the other person's feelings and well-being simply don't matter. People who lack empathy often seem emotionally disconnected. Imagine sharing something deeply personal with someone. Perhaps you're opening up about a difficult time you're going through, like a health scare or the loss of a loved one. Instead of responding with compassion, they brush off your concerns or change the subject entirely. Comments like, "Well, everyone has problems," or "That's life, isn't it?" might feel dismissive, leaving you feeling unheard and unsupported. This behavior isn't just about being insensitive in the moment. Over time, it can lead to a one-sided relationship where your emotions are constantly disregarded. For example, you might have a friend or family member who never asks how you're doing or never seems interested in what's happening in your life. But when they need something, whether it's advice, a favor, or just someone to listen, they expect you to drop everything for them. It's a draining dynamic that leaves you feeling unappreciated. Have you ever shared something exciting or joyful with someone, only to have them immediately bring up a potential problem? For example, you might mention you're planning a trip, and their first response is, "What if the weather is terrible?" Or perhaps you're excited about trying a new hobby, and they say, "That sounds hard. Are you sure you can handle it?" Instead of encouraging you or sharing your excitement, they inject doubt and worry, often leaving you second-guessing yourself. This behavior isn't just about being cautious or realistic. It's about a pattern of focusing on the negative, regardless of the situation. Negative people often complain about everything: the weather, their health, their relationships, or even things that don't directly affect them. They rarely offer solutions or look for the positive side of things, which can make conversations with them feel exhausting. Another hallmark of this trait is their inability to celebrate others' happiness. Even when something great happens to you, their response might be lukewarm or dismissive. They might say, "Well, don't get too excited. It might not last," or "Must be nice to be lucky." These kinds of comments can suck the joy out of your accomplishments and leave you feeling deflated. Why do some people behave this way? Often, chronic negativity stems from unresolved personal struggles. They might feel stuck in their own lives, and instead of addressing their challenges, they project their frustrations outward. Unfortunately, this behavior doesn't just affect them. It affects everyone around them. So, how do you handle someone who is consistently negative? First, protect your emotional energy. If you know a conversation with a negative person will leave you feeling drained, try to limit how much time you spend engaging with them. It's okay to step back and prioritize your well-being. Next, try to redirect the conversation when negativity arises. For instance, if they're complaining about something, you might say, "I understand how you feel, but what's something positive we can focus on instead?" While this won't always work, it can sometimes shift the tone and prevent the conversation from spiraling into negativity. You can also set boundaries for the types of interactions you're willing to have. If someone constantly brings negativity into your life, let them know how it affects you. For example, you might say, "I'd love to hear about your day, but it's hard for me when every conversation feels so heavy. Can we try to focus on something more positive?" Finally, surround yourself with uplifting people. Positive, supportive relationships can counterbalance the effects of negativity and help you maintain a more optimistic outlook. Spending time with people who bring joy and encouragement into your life can remind you that the world isn't as gloomy as a negative person might make it seem. We've covered a lot of ground today: 10 clear signs of toxic behavior to watch out for, along with strategies to protect your emotional well-being. These insights are meant to empower you to prioritize your peace and build healthier, more fulfilling relationships. Remember, recognizing these signs is the first step toward creating a life filled with positivity, respect, and genuine connection. If you've made it this far, thank you for sticking with me. I'd love to hear from you. What's one thing you learned today that you'll start applying in your life? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more conversations that matter. Take care, and remember, you deserve to live a life filled with kindness, respect, and happiness.